You are listening to a Slaughterhouse production. Welcome to the second episode of Josh vs. Josh. I am Wilson T. Kirk, your moderator today, and I am joined by...
Josh Duclos.
And...
Josh Weitzel.
Today we will be talking about Beauty and the Beast, the 2017 remake, as well as the original. Let's get things started by talking about Belle. What did you guys think about Emma Watson?
I thought Emma Watson was great in the film. Like, nothing to write home about, but I think the performance in of itself was fine. It was well done. And it's an easy, like, heroine to get behind, to root for in the film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can complain about her singing voice here and that, but to me it's more about, like, the performance more than the actual quality of the singing voice. And I thought the performance was great.
I thought she was pretty good too, actually. The singing voice did throw me off a little bit, just because there were a few moments when you could kind of tell that it was definitely, like, messed with, auto-tuned or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it did admittedly take me out a little bit just because I don't know, but whatever. But I thought she was fine, and I really liked that she added a lot more to her character that was there, or that wasn't there in the original. She felt like I was definitely getting, like, Hermione Granger vibes. I mean, I definitely felt like she kind of had, like, this fuck you attitude, not in, like, a mean way, but in a kind of way where, like, she's not taking shit from anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually really, really like that. I mean, because if, like, in the original, she doesn't really take shit from the Beast, but it takes her a little while to, like, get to that point, I think. And in this one, like, almost immediately, she's just, like, she's just not taking shit from anyone. And I thought that was great. But overall, I do think she didn't really, like, blow me away or anything like that. I wasn't really, like, impressed by it. But I definitely wasn't, offended by it or anything like that. I thought she did a fine job. I'm kind of neutral on her performance.
Okay. How about you, Ducky? Real quick, how did you think Emma Watson compared to the original Belle?
Well, I think it's kind of tough because if you go by singing voice, like, the original is just amazing, and Emma Watson can't even come close to competing against that. But I would say it's kind of unfair to compare the two because one is, like, a classically trained singer, and the other one, this is, like, as far as I know, her first time singing in a film. But I feel like both characters and both performances are great as, like, heroes or heroines that you can get behind the film and root for. Because I enjoyed, like, I can get behind these characters, I root for these characters, and I want them to succeed and be happy in the end. And, like, you could say maybe one gives a better line here, one gives a better line there, but I feel like they're both fine, great performances that do their job, like, adequately well.
Awesome. Let's go with... It's been a while since... I didn't see the 2017 version, and it's been a while since I've seen the original. Which one would you really say deserves a watch before the other?
Oh, wow. I feel like that's kind of tough to say because I grew up on the original one, but if I have children of my own, which one do I choose to show them? I guess, oh my goodness. I guess I would just have to maybe just show them the original one. Just because that was the first one I watched as a child.
Oh, I don't know if I would even bother showing anyone the remake. Just because I think the 1991 movie is really tight on its own. I mean, as far as storytelling goes and character development and everything like that. Like, it does everything very effectively in only an hour and 20 some odd minutes. And this one goes on for over 2 hours. And I think it's kind of I think the remake is overstuffed. And, like, I when I was watching the remake in theaters, after I hadn't seen the original one in a while, but I watched when I was watching the remake in theaters, I kept thinking like I don't remember any of this stuff happening, but I also don't care. Like they go into all the stuff about like, the Beast's parents and her mom, and I just felt like I just didn't really care that much, because it feels very like they're trying to, overstuff a pillow that's already adequately stuffed. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to fill in all of these blanks that don't really need to be filled in. Because then when I went back over the weekend and rewatched the original movie, at no point was I thinking to myself like, wait, like what happened to, like why? Where is Belle's mom? Like I don't care. Like it doesn't matter. I'm guessing she's dead or she just ran out or whatever. Like I think it's one of those things where it's like if you want to go back to talking about like just very quickly like the remake of the Jungle Book, like if you go back like that far to the 1968 one or whatever year it is, there's like a whole like kind of like non-story that they tell, and then the remake like tells like a very coherent, very strong story, whereas this the original tells a very strong, coherent story, and the remake tells like the same story with all of this extra stuff that just doesn't matter. It just doesn't need any of it. So I don't know if I would really even bother showing the remake to anyone. I don't really think it was a movie that needed all of the extra shit,
Okay.
Well, I feel like just one quick thing about adding all the extra stuff. To me, whenever they added anything, yeah, it may have slowed down the pacing of the film, but it was never deviated too much from the story. It was always about adding more depth to these characters or adding more connections that these characters can have. Because I feel like learning about their backstory can kind of help with them falling for each other. Because how they both have troubled childhoods, because they both didn't have a mother. I mean, and they both didn't have a parent. They only had one parent, or this and that. That kind of helps develop their characters and makes it more understandable that they would follow each other in such a quick amount of time.
Well, I think the one thing that I would agree with you on that is that the whole thing about the parents, the moms in particular, both dying from some illness. I thought that was like a very small detail that like, hey, that could have been like an interesting, quick thing that they did, like in the original movie, like maybe like she sees a portrait and she's like, oh, is this your mom? And he's like, yeah, she died. And she's like, oh, my mom died too. And then it's like, oh, they have like this connection. They do it in like 20 seconds as opposed to this where they dedicate like, in these whole scenes and like a fucking magic book that like teleports them back to her childhood home, which is strangely abandoned. Like no one bothered to like, go back there. And then they have like that really freaky scene where the mom dies of the plague with like the Raven, the plague doctors and everything. And I thought like for a movie that's rated PG, that's really screwed up, I thought. And I don't feel like that extra stuff. I think that the way that they did it didn't add anything substantial to the characters. To me, it just really felt like fluff because it distracted from the rest of the story, like the actual stuff that was going on. And I think that all of the little things that they did to make the characters more three-dimensional. I mean, the characters in the original movie are pretty well fleshed out, I think. They're pretty well defined, and they don't need anything else. So it just seems like they're just adding a whole bunch of stuff that's just not important.
Well, I can kind of agree with you on the mother's death scene being kind of fluff. But I feel like going back to the Beast losing his mother, that just doesn't add depth to the main characters. That adds depth to the side characters, where the teas in the pot, the clock, and the candle. Like in the original film, I didn't understand why they stuck with them for only. They seemed like they only stuck with them for one reason, and that's to break the curse so they can get out of it. With this one, they're like, yes, his father took him in and made him horrible, and we did nothing about it. So if we feel like we are part of the cause of this curse, So we have to help him so he can help us, which I think adds so much to the side characters of the film, which to me was really lacking in the original one, where
I can see your point in that.
that didn't like. I mean, like they're great characters still, but they're still like there could be more of a personal drive to it, like the remake now has, where they're like we have to help him because we didn't help him as a kid.
I can see that.
All right. Let's actually take a second and talk about the Beast, Dan Stevens. Do you think he added anything to that character from the original?
No.
I would kind of agree with that. I think it's a great performance, but they don't really do much with the character. And then what they do change with the character is that they make his eyes bigger. They give him like weird horns. Like it really goes into furry level territories of awkwardness. Where, I mean, like he looks more human, but that's what gives it the uncanny valley look, the odd thing to it. Where in like the original one, it's two anime characters falling for each other. It's more okay, and then now you have like a real human woman really falling for like a realistic looking, I mean realistic in quotations, Beast character, and it just gets kind of like a little weird. But I can't blame Dan Stevens for that, because I think it's a fine performance. I loved the song he has in the film, Evermore. I think he does a wonderful job with that. But like just giving the character bigger eyes and horns doesn't add anything to the character, and it makes him less scary, in my opinion. But
I don't. No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Oh, I was just gonna finish with saying like it's a fine performance, but everything else that goes into that performance, like the computer generation, the directing, the writing, is what kind of holds that character back and that performance back as well.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely wasn't crazy about I personally wasn't crazy about Dan Stevens in this. I think I've seen him, in some amazing stuff. Like, he's amazing in The Guest. He's incredible on Legion. If you haven't seen that, like the guy really has like a ton of range. And I mean, I think one of the challenges is like when you're totally covered in makeup, or CGI, computer effects, or whatever it is. I don't know how much they actually did to him on set, but I definitely felt very removed from him. And I think part of it goes back. My opinions on this kind of again go back to the original film. I think one thing I really like about the original is how expressive the Beast is. Like, there's that awesome moment when they're in the ballroom and they're dancing, and he thinks that like it's like, oh, like she's actually like falling for him, and he turns to all Lumiere and Cogsworth, and he gives them like this big grin. And it looks like very genuine and real. I'm not sure I don't recall if they did anything exactly like that. But I felt like I was getting very little emotion from the Beast overall. But I'm a little hesitant to blame Dan Stevens for that, just because I know that he's a fantastic actor. But I think that the way that they, made up his face and everything like that might have prevented him from giving a fuller performance than he could have. So yeah, I definitely didn't feel as emotionally connected to the Beast in this one as I did in the original.
Well, with you saying that there's not much emotion in the performance, which I kind of disagree with. I mean, I feel like there's moments where that don't quite work, like when he's like first asking her to dinner. Like, that's a funny scene with that little smile that he gives, but like there are moments in the film, like when he first shows her the library, where I think he has a strong range of emotions, where it's like the first time someone told him that they liked something of his, or liked something about him. And there's and then the moment when he lets her go back to her father, there's a shot where she's running away, then it cuts to his face, where he's just kind of standing there, and then he kind of hits him that he loves her, and like it's just like you 100% buy the fact that he's just in total pain in that moment.
Wait,
that total heartbreak.
Remind me, how many times have you seen the movie?
The 2017 one?
Yeah.
3 times.
Oh, okay. I've only seen it once, like a month ago.
Okay. I literally saw it like 3 times in a week. So it was like,
Yeah,
yeah.
you could do that. Shit.
All right, let's go back and talk about the film as a whole, the 2017 version. What are your overall feelings about it? Did you like it?
Oh, I loved it. I think it. I mean, there are some problems with like it's just like a straight up adaptation of the animated film, and then they do add some scenes that don't quite work. But when their whole goal of that film was just to recreate an animated film into a live action film, I think it did it beautifully. And what they did add that did work was like the Evermore song was wonderful. They added some great backstory, some more depth to the main characters, and also even some of the side characters. Like to me, LaFool is way better in the remake than in the original one. I'd never remember his name, so it's LaFool to me.
Le Fou.
Le Fou.
Le Fou.
It's not fool. It's not lay fool. It's like foo.
Fou.
Literally,
but,
like,
like,
I
even-
pity the fool.
They just take
But with
what
no
worked
L.
so well in the original film, and they made it to me even better. Like as Gaston is so much better in this one than he is in the original film. So much funnier and more like with the original one. I don't understand why everyone's like everyone but Belle is in love with him, but in this one I can totally understand it because he's funny, he's charming, he's good looking, and the guy can sing like no one else. It's just a they just took what worked in the original and made it better. That's how I see this remake.
See,
Yeah.
I totally disagree. I just think that the remake adds all of this stuff that I didn't really care about. I didn't think that the added songs added a lot to the movie. I thought that the performances were just fine. I don't really like I personally prefer the way that they did Gaston in the animated film, just because he is like when you look at that guy, like who he actually is. Even in this one, they try to make him out to be like this, like way larger than life guy, who's just totally like a piece of shit. And one thing I really like about, like, you know, going back and doing, you know, watching the original, like, you know, his song in the pub, is awesome. I mean, I personally love like the, you know, all the villain songs from the 90s. But I just feel like I feel like I lost a lot, and part of the reason why I like it so much is because they talk about how great he is, and just like, you know, there's that line where he talks about how he's like covered in hair, just, you know, and he takes like you know, he talks about something like no one spits like Gaston. He takes a bite out of his belt, chews up the leather, and then spits it out. Like, you have all of that, like, the guy's a caricature of a douchebag, and in cartoon form, that works really, really well. It's very, very effective. And in this, I just didn't buy it. I think Luke Evans was a good choice, but maybe he didn't go big enough, or maybe he could not have gone, you know, maybe he couldn't have gone big enough, as big as he could have gone. But I was just bored for the first like hour and a half of the movie, because I had all these expectations from the original, just thinking like, oh, like I can't wait till they get to Gaston's song. And then they just kind of turn it, they like, you know, rewrite all the lyrics so it's a little bit more bland, and then they, you know, they get rid of all the cartoony stuff, and then they just turn it into like a Broadway musical where there's like 1,000 people in this place, and you know, I just didn't care. I was just totally for most of the movie I just felt totally taken out of it.
Oh, I would disagree with you on that.
I mean, I just didn't care for any of the added stuff. I didn't give a shit.
I mean, you're telling me that the scene where Luke Evans, where you say he doesn't go big enough, but in the scene where like he's with Belle's father and he's over, like he's too mad, so his friend tries to calm him down and tells him to like think about the war and to think about widows, and it cuts to Luke Evans and he has the biggest smile on his face and he goes, "Widows." Like, that's not big enough for you? This guy is turned on by the fact of widows.
It's a funny little moment, but it's not, it's not nearly as big as he could have gone.
And
I mean, like that kind of character to me, is just the epitome of, just like a shitty misogynist, and he is a caricature. He is a caricature, and in the remake, he's not nearly as big as he should have been. Like, one little line about that thing, like the widows you just mentioned, like it's funny, and I definitely chuckled at that moment, but also it's I think maybe they could have gone bigger, but also if they did go bigger, it would be at the expense of something else. I just think that kind of character works better in an animated film because he is so ridiculous.
Okay, I can kind of understand that, but I feel like with taking it into the live action realm, you can't go that big. So to tone it down a little bit helps a lot, because if Luke Evans was just as big as the original Gaston, it would look cartoonish. It wouldn't be, it wouldn't fit with everything else that's going on. I know there's talking teacups and there's a beast and all that. There's magic in this world, but it would be the jumping of the shark moment. If Gaston, who doesn't believe in the magic and all that, is like just as big and over the top as that stuff, to have him kind of pulled back, kind of to me added more to the character than to have him go over the top.
I think it's just a limitation of what the movie's trying to accomplish. I mean, all of these are like, they're made like for kids to be able to watch and appreciate, but also they're for people who are our age, who grew up with these movies, to see them in a new light, in a new form, with real human beings and real sets, and nothing's actually, drawn. It's not cartoon. It's, I get that they try to ground it. But just, again, like, the guy's a caricature. It just doesn't work. And I know that there's not always going to be a perfect way to create certain kinds of characters in certain forms of movies or whatever. I mean, maybe just, they could have, if they really wanted to, it probably wouldn't have worked, but they could have just made the whole movie like totally ridiculous and outlandish, and, but that definitely wouldn't have worked for this kind of thing, I don't think. I just don't buy it. I just didn't buy the movie until maybe like at any point. I just couldn't get into it.
Talking about casting, is there anything that you would change? Is there anyone that you would want to recast?
I would probably recast the woman who played Mrs. Potts.
Emma Thompson?
Yeah, just because she... I don't even know if I would like fully recast her, but I don't really like her kind of Cockney accent. Just because it's fine for throughout the movie, but then when she sings the song when they're in the ballroom, Tale as Old as Time or whatever it is, when they sing that song,
the Beauty and the Beast song, the title of the movie.
There you go. I haven't seen this as many times as you have. But when she does it in a Cockney accent, it really pulled me out. I mean, I don't really have a lot of strong memories of watching the movie as a kid, but I still kind of have an idea of like what the original, song sounded like, and hearing something, not just like a different actress, but singing it in a different way. Because when you do Cockney, it's a different inflection on every word, and hearing that being sung like that really pulled me out. It's way less romantic when they do it this way. When they did it with her doing that particular voice. And you're shaking your head no.
Because I disagree 100%. I think that's, like, it's been a while since I've seen the original one, so maybe, like, it wasn't so fresh in my mind. but just watching that scene again in IMAX, like it was like watching the original back at when I was a child again, because it didn't take me out because I didn't notice any difference. It felt like just the same song again, but with a higher production value and with Emma Thompson singing it, who is just lovely as the teapot.
Right, but I'm saying the thing is, like, I haven't seen. You say you haven't seen the movie in a really long time. I haven't seen it probably in an even longer time, and I'm guessing, like, I didn't watch this movie constantly when I was a kid, but based on the review that I saw that you had written, it seems like you have. Like, I've watched like The Lion King or like Toy Story like a million times when I was a kid. I go years without seeing them. I watch them again when I'm much older. And, the movie's better when you're older, but also you remember every single thing that happens beat by beat by beat. And I'm just wondering, how do you not remember exactly what that song sounds like?
Well, maybe it's
down
not,
to like the very small details.
Maybe it's not more about like remembering something, but maybe it was just the way the story was being told, the way it was paced, the way that the production design, the acting, the score, just it fit with the film that it was. It fit within the story that it was telling.
No, it didn't.
It didn't take me.
It's the same song. The
it's
lyrics
the same
are
song,
totally unchanged.
but with the Cockney accent, as you like to mention, I think it worked with it just worked with the film. It worked with the character. It worked with the scenery.
No, it doesn't.
It worked for me. It never once took me out.
It totally pulls you out of the scene. Pulled me out. It completely removed me from the film. The most romantic moment, the most iconic scene in the whole movie was ruined literally because an actress made a choice to use a fucking Cockney accent instead of just her regular English accent. She's like the only person in the movie who's doing something kind of weird, Like, who's doing like a slightly different accent. Like, Ewan McGregor goes like full French, whatever. Every other character is like the same. And then suddenly you've got Emma Thompson, who's doing this like wild Cockney voice, singing at the same time. It doesn't work. The only Cockney singing that works probably in anything that I can think of is Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins. And that's just so over the top because the entire movie is so over the top. And that's why that shit works. This is like a straight-laced movie. It's very by the numbers because it's, Disney making a remake of another animated Disney movie that's very by the numbers. And when they just throw a Cockney accent in there, it totally changes the tone of that scene, I think. Because I could not, I was losing my shit during that moment because it was so fucking mad.
Because it's great. I was losing my shit too. It was a great moment.
No, I felt offended that this moment that's supposed to be incredibly nostalgic for so many people is being ruined by this one actress who's just using a slightly different voice than she normally would speak. If she had just done an English, like a normal English accent, I don't know what a normal English accent's called, that would have been totally fine. Instead, she does something fucking weird, and it totally ruins the whole moment for me.
Well, I think
I hated it.
Since it's Emma Thompson, and who's, in my opinion, a national treasure of the United Kingdom, she can do whatever she wants.
I agree, but I don't think she can just do whatever she wants because it just didn't fucking work.
The problem is that you're the problem in the situation. She's the perfect one. It's your fault for not buying into that scene.
Okay, so it's my fault for hearing nails on a chalkboard.
How dare you?
No, she can write on chalk, beautiful cursive, all kinds of things. But then at a certain moment, she just takes her fingernails and drags them across, creating this awful screeching noise that just ruins fucking everything.
I would gladly be in the same room as Emma Thompson as she scratches a chalkboard. I would be honored. You wouldn't?
No, not really. Oh. I'd love to meet her after or before, but not during. It's a really frustrating moment because I want to buy into that moment. I totally bought into it when Angela Lansbury did it in the movie. I'm like, God, this is so fucking romantic. This is perfect. And then I watched what they did there. and I'm so far removed. I'm so completely removed. It's not like that's her natural singing voice, like or not. It's not like her natural speaking voice, what she's doing in that movie, and it completely pulled me out. It feels so fake, so forced. It just does not work.
That's where you're wrong, Weitzel. It's perfect.
I guess we could disagree.
All right, Ducky. Since you seem to think that every piece of this movie is exactly as it should be, is there anything that you would want to change about it? Are there any casting decisions you would make?
I really can't think of anything that I would want to change in this film. Because especially for one, it's made so much money, so I don't know why you'd want to try to ruin that as well. But, like, just the production design is spot on. The casting choices are spot on.
Wait.
The music is spot on. And then what the songs that Alan Menken wrote for this film as new songs, they fit just perfectly along with all the other songs. Do you have something to say, Weitzel? No, he doesn't. So back to what I was saying about Beauty and the Beast.
The movie's really long. It doesn't need the extra music.
Oh, yes,
it doesn't need any of the extra fucking pizzazz or whatever. It's fine the way it is. And I think some of the extra shit totally ruins the movie, for me at least.
Don't you feel that with it becoming live action, with the people talking about Stockholm Syndrome, it feels more real with a live action movie as opposed to a cartoon? Don't you need the extra information in order to kind of forget about that aspect of it?
Valid point, Travis.
It does have a point. Well, I don't think it's exactly it isn't exactly Stockholm Syndrome. But I think even with all of the stuff that they bring up, it's not really in the smaller character things that bother me. It's the general story that I think is where people get the idea of Stockholm Syndrome. Because she is, I mean, the guy's abusive. He's got these crazy outbursts, and she is his captive. And at the end of the story, they fall in love. Like, the shit that happens in the middle is kind of, I don't know. I mean, like, if you were to explain this movie to someone in broad strokes, and you say, like, oh yeah, like, she becomes his prisoner and then they fall in love at the end. I mean, with some other shit in the middle there. They think you're fucking crazy. I mean, what they do in the animated movie, they, kind of slowly work into it. And I think they did it. I think the animated movie is probably, I think it's much better than this, but it's definitely not straight Stockholm Syndrome. But also I think overall, like, the general idea of the movie, it sort of proposes the idea that the two of them falling in love can fix his, I mean, like, the two of them falling in love can rescue him from his anger and his problems, which is a generally dangerous idea because that's just not how the world works. I don't think that, a woman doesn't come into your life to fix you, That's just and the idea of, like, girls watching this, I mean, little girl, kids who watch this, like, they might not immediately understand, like, why that's so dangerous. But when they, I remember seeing this thing a few years ago in a class that I took, and it was going on about how all these 90s Disney movies are problematic. Some of them I think were a little far-reaching, but the ones they talk about in this, they show this study where they put a bunch of kids in a room and they have them watch the movie and they ask them questions afterwards. And literally, after they watched Beauty and the Beast, one of the girls was like, "Yeah, if you're, like they ask them what's the moral of the story, and she says something along the lines of, if a boy's being mean to you and you're nice to him, he'll stop being mean to you," which is just not how. I mean, that's like a straight up abusive relationship. That's how Belle ends up dead at the end of the story. And I think that um, overall, at the end of the day, um, that's what really pisses me off about the movie is that it sort of imposes this idea that she can fix him just because she's nice to him, even though he's got all these anger issues, and even though he's soft and mushy in between, just turns into a prince at the end of the day, like a generic prince. What have you?
Dan
wouldn't it
Stevens
be
is
a
anything
much-
but generic. That man's lovely.
Are you? Holy shit! Were you even paying attention to that fucking wig that he was wearing when he turned back into a prince?
He
I'm
may have
not
looked like
kidding.
Fabio, but just a better version of Fabio.
I died laughing. I might have been the only person laughing in the theater when I saw that fucking wig.
Because everyone else was crying.
The point is that like he's I don't like that he turns back into a prince at the end. I think that's really stupid. Like yeah, like he changes or whatever. But I still think that sends kind of a dangerous message to kids, even though they might not get it, immediately. Like as their children, you watch it now and you think like, wow, I can't like fucking believe that shit. It's kind of frustrating to me.
Well, one thing I gotta say about the remake, I think what they do well is that this is what adding the backstory, adding the depth to these characters, is that that's not the conversation with this movie. Is this movie Stockholm Syndrome or not? I mean, as far as I can tell from what I've read of other people's opinions.
That was just his question.
Well, no, that's just from. Sorry, one second. Well, no, that's because like that comes straight from the original, not from the remake. Like people who look at the original, the '91 animated film, go, "That's Stockholm Syndrome." Nobody's looking at 2017. Oh, that's Stockholm Syndrome, because I think they did a way better job of developing these two characters in their relationship. So it made far more believable that they would fall in love with each other than just spending a week with each other.
The remake is a lot less Stockholm Syndrome-y than the first one. But it still doesn't change the through line of the movie.
True, but
Because
to me, it's the journey, not the destination, though. And the journey they go through is like I buy the fact that they love each other in the end, a little bit more so than the original.
I agree with you that it's the journey, not the destination. But that's just like your argument for everything.
Well, it works every time.
I don't necessarily think so. I think we've had a lot of shouting matches about, the destination being a fucking problem. But as far as this goes, I mean, I still think that at the end of the day, regardless of which movie you're watching, it's got kind of a shitty through line. And
I feel like you can make any movie have a shitty through line, though. And that reducing every single movie to a single sentence ruins it.
What? No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying, like, if you want to be very general about a movie, you start this one by saying a selfish prince gets turned into a beast for being a piece of shit. He turns every other person around him into a fucking inanimate object.
Well, he doesn't.
And then he has to fall in love. Oh, what happens then? Oh, well, he meets this girl, and then he captures her. He imprisons her in his castle, and then what happens next? Well, they fall in love. They find out that he's not that shitty. Okay, but he still was like screaming and kind of abusive towards her. Showed abusive tendencies towards her, and her presence being there made him less of a shitty person. And at the end of the movie, he turns into a generic person.
See, you're telling it in a really crappy way, though. Because I was like almost brought to tears by this film. I was not brought to tears by that.
Okay, then Ducky, how about you give me your version of that sales pitch?
Well, I feel like I would rather just show you the movie rather than try to reduce something
No.
that's quite a visual medium.
Stop.
Your point was about the through line and how easily you can ruin any movie that way.
Well, yeah, he proved my point.
No. Stop.
By using words like generic, shitty.
Stop. Ducky, I gave you my through line. It is your turn to give me yours.
That's what I want as well.
Because
okay.
you kind of challenged me to do it when you said you can make any movies. You can even take a movie that I love, or better yet, take a movie that we both love and give it a through line, and you will see that you can't make every single movie sound shitty by just giving a through line. I mean, just, I don't know. I'm looking at the movies on my shelf right now for, like, an example. I don't know. Let's take, what's a movie I saw recently? Like Punch Drunk Love. That's a great through line. You know, it's really simple. Two people fall in love. Guy makes a bad mistake. He has to fix it. He ends up kind of blundering his way through, you know, this relationship. But at the end of the day, they fall in love, and it feels real. Granted, that's way more abridged than what I did. But even so, I mean, like, the idea is that that movie's at the end of the day, that movie still has a really positive message, and they're both love stories. I mean, the Beast is kind of an abusive piece of shit when we first meet him, and her presence fixes him. In Punch Drunk Love, he's just a fucking sad sack. And then her presence doesn't really fix him. He's still kind of a sad sack at the end of the movie. The only difference is that he's got something to fight for now. That's a huge difference. Because by the end of the movie, when he turns into an actual prince, he's become every single generic movie prince we've ever seen. The only difference is that 5 minutes ago, he was a monster. So now it's your turn to give me your through line for Beauty and the Beast. Go.
Okay. Oh my, on the spot. All right.
Yeah, you're on
a young
the
woman
spot.
from a village meets a man, a prince cursed to be a beast forever unless he falls in love. And, oh, so yeah, I wish I was told about this before.
This whole thing's
I'm not good at
improvised.
through
What the
lines,
fuck
man.
Are you talking about?
I like watching movies.
Yeah, and you're here to talk about movies now,
Mhm.
which you love talking about so much. So talk. Give me your through line. Be as vague as you want. Just give me what the story is. Tell me the story. 20-second sales pitch kind of thing.
You know, I work in the film
A
industry.
log line
I don't have to deal with this abuse.
at a movie theater. If a
I
customer,
still don't-
hold on. If a customer comes up to you and says Beauty and the Beast, I'm thinking about going to see that movie. What's that movie about? What do you tell them?
That the less you know about the film, the better the film is.
No. They say, no, I'm not going to buy a ticket from you until you tell me what the movie is about.
And then I'll be
Who are
like,
these
ma'am,
people?
you're holding the line. I need to help other people.
No, stop. Who are these people? What is the situation?
It is
What is the
opening night of
story
Beauty and the
of the
Beast,
movie?
and there's a long line, man. We have to get through everyone
no.
here.
He's making a
Ducky.
valid point, Ducky. I think that
You're
you have
not-
to answer one of these.
You are not going to finagle your way out of this.
Oh,
This is
I will
not
do my
happening.
best. I will tire you guys out.
You will do your best. You are not going to tire me out. I
Oh,
can
yeah.
go all night.
I mean, I'm already getting kind of tired, to be honest, but, you know.
I don't want to hear it, Ducky. I want you to answer one
No,
of his
you-
questions.
All right, I'll
Don't
answer
tell me that you're
one
tired.
question by Whitesell. Just one, though.
No. Okay, you're going to answer one question by me?
Maybe.
Okay. I want you to give me a fucking brief synopsis, a through line, some kind of shit that I already gave you about Beauty and the Beast right fucking now. I don't care which version of the movie it is the story that we are talking about here. You are going to give that to me before I close my computer at the end of the night.
Okay.
That is happening. It is going to be recorded on Travis's thingy, and people are going to hear what it fucking is.
Are you done?
Go.
No, go ahead.
A woman from a village meets a beast, a prince that has been cursed to be a beast unless he can find someone that loves him in return, and is kidnapped by this beast. And over the course of a few weeks, they both fall for each other and lift the curse. The end.
I don't know how you sell movie tickets talking like that. No one's gonna buy that movie.
But yet still like
I'm
$1
impressed by
billion in box office
you.
still though.
You gave me something.
I did
I'll
give you
that
something.
much.
And to be
I don't
fair,
think-
it's my job to just give them the ticket, not sell them the ticket.
No, we're not talking about fucking semantics here, Ducky. Jesus Christ.
Semantics. Technicalities, the best kind of correct.
Oh my God.
All right.
Semantics of the movie, not semantics. Fucking film industry job.
I like the quotes on that. We've mentioned the box office a little bit. It has crossed $1 billion. Weitzel, do you think it's worth the $1 billion that the box office made?
I don't really care.
No.
I'm gonna
More
be
so
totally
than the
honest.
Jungle Book.
It's hold on. It's if you ask me if any Disney remake is gonna cross $1 billion, it's gonna be that one. I mean, it's it didn't like people know Beauty and the Beast. I mean, you just mentioned something about the Jungle Book. I barely heard what you said, but Jungle
I can repeat it.
I know. Yeah, tell me what you said.
More so than when it was asked about the $1 billion if it's worth it.
Right.
It's more
right.
so than the Jungle Book.
Okay.
Which didn't quite
So-
cross $1 billion, I know, but
The Jungle Book came out in
wasn't that
1960.
good.
The original Jungle Book came out in 1968. That's like fucking century ago. 67. Sorry, whatever year it is. That movie is not quite in the public eye as any movie really from the Disney Renaissance. I mean, when you walk into a place like Disney World, you see Belle, you see characters from that movie everywhere. No one gives a fuck about the Jungle Book. No one gives a shit. You see Beauty and the Beast everywhere. People know what that movie is. They get it. They've all seen it 1,000 times before. That movie is almost guaranteed, assuming it has positive reviews, which it does, that movie is guaranteed to cross $1 billion at the box office. Maybe not, $1 billion, but it's, guaranteed to make a shitload of money. The fact that the Jungle Book made as much money as it did is unbelievable on its own, which kind of proves my point from last week. That's actually a great movie. But yeah,
or maybe it was just April and there was just nothing to go see.
I'm not really that impressed by the Jungle or by Beauty and the Beast.
Freudian
crossing
slip.
that.
He said what he really meant.
Yeah, that actually happened last week. Go fuck yourself. I don't really know. I don't really care that much about Beauty and the Beast crossing $1 billion. I think it's great when movies make that much money, unless they're some kind of shit that Michael Bay turns out. But I don't really have any strong feelings about it.
Well, I'm happy that it grossed $1 billion.
I'm sure you are.
Because Disney, outside of really the Jungle Book, has been doing an amazing job with these remakes and Maleficent. Like I think this is like the right track to go on. This is like a great platform to keep going forward. With like I mean, even though Jon Favreau is making Lion King.
What do you mean by like a great platform? What do you mean by
Like
that?
I feel like this and like Cinderella are two great films to look at. This should be like a template of how we should remake these films. Well, one with Cinderella, we can modernize the film and make it better, or with Beauty and the Beast, we can just do the same movie like again, but add a little bit more depth to the film and just make it a more richer story experience than what the original had to offer.
I don't think they should be adding more stuff to the movie. I mean, when you go as far back as like the Jungle Book, and they add a whole bunch of stuff, there wasn't really a lot there to begin with. It was very loose. I mean, like they're talking about remaking The Sword in the Stone. That movie like barely has a story.
Well,
I mean, there's not a lot going on. I mean, I think it's a great movie, but it's the kind of thing where it's like if they remade that now, they could easily add tons of stuff to make that story better.
which would be a good reason to want to remake it. That would be part of the
course.
Cinderella side of
course.
the template.
But like when they remake the Jungle Book, like I know that they're not gonna. I know they're gonna follow it more closely to what they did with Beauty and the Beast. They're gonna add a whole bunch of character stuff. They're gonna add more songs, assuming it is a musical. I mean, I don't want that. I just kind of want I think the only reason why I'm excited for the Lion King remake is just because I love The Lion King, and I'm gonna go see it when it comes out. Why wouldn't I? And I guess that's why you went to go see Beauty and the Beast 3 times in theaters.
Mhm.
I get
good.
that, but I don't think that when you add a bunch of stuff the way that they did in Beauty and the Beast, it looks added. It doesn't feel organic or natural. And I know that when I watch The Lion King, there's a pretty good chance it's going to feel the same way. Maybe just because I know the source pretty well, but I think that, there's not really any way to escape that. And I think that there are ways to make it much more organic and natural. But given the way that Beauty and the Beast, given the pacing of that movie, none of it felt real. None of it felt organic or natural. They really kind of had to squeeze a bunch of shit in there that I just don't think worked.
Well, I certainly disagree with that because I feel like, especially with Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella to a certain extent, it adds more humanity to these characters. It adds more depth to the world. Like there was like certain you shouldn't just be remaking these films just to fill in plot holes. But like in the first film, in the original Beauty and the Beast film, like there's almost like if you really think about it, like the prince was like 10 years old when he got cursed. No one knows what love means when they're 10 years old. But in the remake, he's like 20 years old, or like 30. I don't know how old he is in the film, but he's an adult that should know better, and he doesn't know better, and that's why he's cursed. And with the original, you don't have the whole we feel responsible for the prince because we didn't help him as a kid. In the original, you don't have that, so it just feels like why are these characters here? Well, they're only here just because they've been cursed with the prince, and they have to be there now that rather than wanting to be there, which is far more important than selfish gains. Rather than it's in the original film, it's selfish gains over, and then the remake, it is like it's trying to help someone that they care about. And I buy the fact more that they're friends in the remake than in the original, which I don't buy the fact that they were a close knit family, even though they weren't like blood family. They were like a family that lived in this house, which I totally get from the remake.
I don't think that really tiny itty bitty things like that stuff doesn't really bother me. But when you want to add entire other subplots like about the parents dying, like the way that they incorporate that into the story doesn't work for me. I'm not saying that like every single thing that you add is shit. It's really just how you do it, and the way it was done in this remake did not. It felt very forced, but also I personally think the movie moves at like a breakneck speed from the start. Like it goes straight from like I felt like they never give they don't give any scenes at the moment to breathe. They just like get them over with just so it felt like they were making these scenes to get them over with to get to the next part. It goes so fast, and because of that, I think I was just so bored for the first like hour and a half, because they wanted to add all of this extra stuff. Whereas you watch, if you were to, I don't know, write like a novelization of Beauty and the Beast or whatever, you do the original, it's going to be wafer thin. If you do the remake, it's going to be a little bit bigger, because you can add all of this extra stuff. But it's not the way that they do it in the movie did not work for me. It did feel very forced because they embellish those, they embellish moments that were in the original because they want you to feel nostalgic. You're like, here's the scene where they're dancing in the ballroom. Here's, the opening musical number. Here's like the 10-minute, Gaston number that you all know and love. And then all of these other things are, it's like, oh, by the way, remember when your mom died of the fucking plague? By the way, do you remember when the prince's mom died? It's all of these little moments that are, they really had to squeeze all of it in a really inorganic way. And that's what frustrates me. That's why the remake doesn't work for me. I mean, if you want...
To me, that's why the remake works, is because in the original film, it felt just too quick for them to change that. There wasn't like... Yes, I know, like, just having two characters in the room talk to each other for an entire movie, they may end up falling in love with each other. But adding these scenes, rather than like actually showing the mom dying, rather than just being told about the mom dying, for both instances, helps like bind these characters together, helps bring them together, and it makes it far more believable that they would fall in love with each other rather than, well, they're just here. No one at Belle's village likes her, and there's freaking no one in the castle for Beast to fall in love with. So they would just fall in love with each other. With this, you have to believe that they have common interests, they have disagreements, but they respect each other as two people, rather than just being, well, no one loves me either, so let's fall in love with each other.
Can I ask you something? You saw Ant-Man, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember that moment? I really hope you do. There's a moment in the movie where, throughout like the whole movie, she keeps asking about Evangeline Lilly. I think that's her name. She keeps asking about like what happened to the mom, and Michael Douglas is like too scared to tell her, what happened to the mom. And you realize that this kid, or as a kid, she probably didn't know what happened, and she was too young to understand that her mom literally shrunk down to the size of like nothing. And she spends her whole life having no clue like what happened. And then he finally admits it to her. And then in the midst of like a montage, he admits this thing to her. And then Paul Rudd comes in, makes a joke about being really awkward during an important family moment, and then just like runs off. And that's like the end of that entire thing. That's like a huge emotional moment for that character, and it felt like throughout Beauty and the Beast that kept happening. There are these huge emotional moments that are monumental for these small minor characters. Not even for the small minor characters, for the major characters too. The thing about the moms and whatever, and they go by so quick without a second thought that they add almost nothing to the story. Like knowing about what happened to the original Wasp and Ant-Man, like he could have just fucking told her. Instead, they make it like this really fast emotional moment that by the time you get to the end of it, it's like a throwaway. They don't even give a shit. It's like the same thing in Beauty and the Beast repeatedly. They're just like, what happened to my mom? Oh, I'm not going to tell you. And then they're just like, by the way, I have a magic book. And it'll take you to this place. And she's like, where are we? Oh, I remember now. And then, by the way, your mom died of the fucking plague. And then they like forget about it for the rest of the movie.
Well, I feel like
it's not
brought up again.
It carries very little weight to the actual overall story. It just felt so unimportant.
Well, that's what I get from the multiple viewings of this film, where it's not a huge major part of their lives, but it's definitely what influences them or has some sort of impact in their life, and it kind of adds to their choices, to the decisions. It explains why the Beast is like a horrible person. This person that loved him and cared for him died, and then someone took care of his life that didn't like him. So, of course, he doesn't like anyone else because he didn't get any of that love. With Belle, she was thankfully able to have a father that loved her and respected her. So that's why she was able to have such an upbeat look at life, and the Beast have such a down look at life.
Right, but then
it's complete. Like it's not constantly. You're not constantly being reminded about it because this is what good storytelling is. Good storytelling is. It's just like it's there. You can see the influence on it, and you can see it impacting these characters, and you can see from that moment on. This is when they find out about their both their mothers had died. The scene right after that is like the first scene where they really connect with each other, which is the library scene, and that's the first scene where they really start to fall for each other, because they're able to, like, especially for the Beast, because he's like, oh, I've never had this caring, loving person in my life, and now to have that person actually there for him is really big for him.
But
and to have that scene, to have the death of the mothers, adds so much to that. It's what makes it believable, in my opinion.
I was going to ask another question, but I don't think I need to anymore. Okay. I don't really. I do see where you're getting about how the death of the parents makes their relationship more believable. I get that. What I'm getting at is the way that it's done. Like, the death of a parent is monumental. It is huge for any person's life, assuming that you're actually close with your parents and you give a shit about them. Um, but in this movie, it felt like a total throwaway moment. Every single time they brought up the mom or the moms, every single time they do all of it, I just didn't care.
I feel like
I
you
don't-
need to watch the
it's-
movie
it's-
again with that constantly on your mind because it's totally there. At least that
Right,
like
but-
influence is totally there throughout the entire movie.
When I watch the original, I don't really buy it. I mean, I don't buy that I need to know what happened to the parents. And you'd be like, oh, well, what happened to the beast's? Like, I don't care. I don't need to know. That's not like the story that we're telling right now. You know, it's about him right now in the present, not about what he did like when he was a kid. It's what he's up to. What's going on with him right now at this exact moment. And that's what matters to me. But I don't think that any of that stuff was necessary at all. And it really did feel very forced. But I think that might just be a stylistic thing too, because it is a very by the numbers film. And when you're going to cram extra stuff into a movie that's very by the numbers, it's going to feel rushed and forced, which it does.
But I feel like that's what changes it from being a by numbers shot for shot remake of the animated film into something of its own. Like, it can stand on its own feet. I mean, it probably wouldn't have been as successful if there wasn't for the original film, but people still would have saw this movie. People still would have liked this movie, and it still works within the story as well. It works being on its own story and as a remake or as a retelling of the original film.
I disagree. I don't think it can stand on its own. I think it needed the original film to cross $1 billion. It needed the original to... I mean, like, when you watch that first trailer, a teaser that came out almost like a year ago, whenever it was, last spring, every single image is instantly recognizable. The flower, the torn picture, just the words, "Be our guest." That movie immediately crossed $1 billion at the box office the second that you see that trailer, because all the people who love that are like, they're like, I'm there, I'm sold, I'm ready for it. I'm going to go see this movie. Regardless of what the reviews say, they're there at the theater the day it comes out. Without that, the movie is nothing.
I would disagree.
Maybe
I mean,
okay,
it
maybe
would
not,
not
maybe,
be as
maybe not
big.
nothing.
Of course, it wouldn't be as big. But then
It would-
that's why you add those little story bits about the parents, about the servants at the castle feel like they have to be there now for him because they weren't there for him to when he was a child. That is what that's what makes it able to stand on its own feet. And it would have grown $1 billion without that stuff. But now at least they improved a story that was already pretty well told to begin with. So it's just making fine little touches to like a great painting. You know, you're not completely changing the whole thing. You're just making little changes that improves the whole picture.
No, I get that. What I'm saying though is the way that they approach it does not work. I don't think. I think that if you watch the original film is just fine the way it is. I don't have any qualms about it, other than anything else I might have mentioned earlier. I don't really know how. I mean, I'm not a director. I don't know exactly how I would personally squeeze all of this extra stuff in. But the movie spends so much time trying to make you relive that same emotion that you felt when you were a kid. That when they try to add this stuff, they're practically telling you like, hey, by the way, come look at this, when really you're just going to the theater to see them dance in the ballroom again, to see Be Our Guest, to see Gaston. You're going just to see the same movie again. And to me, the way that they made the film with all of the extra stuff, they're really just kind of like, look at this right here. This is a new thing that you can come and look at. Look at it. It's so shiny. We're going to tell the backstory of Belle's parents. Now, if you didn't have the original film to do that for you, we would probably be having a much different conversation. I don't think the movie would be nearly as well received without the original to back it up. Because when you go see that, you're like, nostalgia. That's like your first thought.
But I feel like
And
if
then
you didn't have the original there, then this would be the original Beauty and the Beast. And maybe
Yeah, but it
it
wouldn't be
probably
any good.
wouldn't be the same. Like, it wouldn't be like the first animated film nominated for Best Picture level of importance. But
No.
people would still love it. People would still go see it. It would still be a
No.
big success.
People would still go see it. It might be a moderate success, but there's absolutely no way that it would break any kind of records. There's no way that anyone would really be like truly, genuinely, thoroughly interested in this movie unless it had the original. This movie is going to stand forever in the shadow of the original. Like, for the entire existence of cinema, people are going to be talking about the 1991 Beauty and the Beast. The main difference is that movie was the first ever animated film to be nominated for Best Picture. Beauty and the Beast might get nominated for a couple technical awards, and that's it. It will not get any acting nominations. It will not get any acting nominations.
Well, the original didn't get any acting
hold on.
nominations either.
Shut up. It's voice acting is a huge difference. It might get nominated for costumes, probably. 'Cause
Which the
period
original
pieces
didn't
are
get
allowed to do
nominated
that.
for.
It's an animation.
I know.
Hold on. It won't get nominated for screenplay, won't get nominated for Best Picture or Director or cinematography or visual effects. I'll give it costumes and maybe an original song. Probably, because it's a musical. But compare that to being the very first of its kind to be nominated for Best Picture, back when there were only 5 Best Pictures. You can't look at me with a straight face and tell me that this movie will stand on its own or be better than the original. That's not possible. You can't tell me that that's the case. It's just not true. This movie does not have the ability to stand on its own because it spends so much time trying to be nostalgic and live in the shadow of the original film, and then point to all of the other stuff and say, hey, come and look at this. We're going to tell you the backstory now.
Well, I feel like the whole point of this remake was just to tell it in a different way and then to add a little bit to it. And if that was just the whole point of the film, and that's exactly what they do, there's something pretty impressive with actually succeeding in what you were trying to do to begin with, which is something in film that almost never happens.
But is it needed?
Is it needed? Well, you could say
because
that
I
about
watched-
almost any remake.
Yeah.
You could say that about
Our
any...
remakes needed.
Okay, but if we're talking about, again, I want to go back to the Jungle Book or something like The Sorcerer's Stone or something like Sleeping Beauty or something like any of those much older Disney movies. They're all, I want to say that they're all like under 90 minutes. They're really short. They're very light on story. The only reason that people know them is because, well, not all of them. The only reason that people know, like, do you know what Sleeping Beauty's actual name is? Princess what?
I
Do you
have
even know?
No idea.
Starts with an A, I believe.
Name is Princess Aurora.
Yeah, I knew that.
But you know everything from the 90s. You know Snow White. You know, all these other characters. But like that movie is so, and you see the dragon from that film, and you say, oh, that's the dragon from Sleeping Beauty. You don't really know what the story's about. I saw the movie a couple years ago. I don't really remember what it's about. These older films are so light on story that it's really easy to craft something brand new around a very loose framework, which is exactly what they did with The Jungle Book. If you're going to look back on something like Beauty and the Beast, it's 90 minutes. It's already a really tight film. It's got a really tight story. You know the names of every single character, not just because it's much newer compared to something like Sleeping Beauty, but because, Disney keeps pushing it on you, and it's a legitimately good movie. There's a lot there to work with. There's a lot of story. Same thing goes for anything like Hercules or Mulan or Hunchback of Notre Dame or any other movie, Lion King, any movie that comes out of the 90s. They're short, but they're very tight, and they're very effective storytelling, which is why they're also critically acclaimed. And any Disney movie remake that they're remaking from the 90s, I can almost guarantee you will not live up to any kind of remake that Disney makes from, 50 years ago. Because the newer films have a much tighter framework, the older ones don't. And so something like Beauty and the Beast just doesn't really stand a chance against the original.
Of course. I think that we should start wrapping this up.
Sounds good to me.
How about you give me some final thoughts, Ducky?
I think the original and the remake of Beauty and the Beast are both fantastic movies. I feel like you could show someone both films and that people love both of them. And then the new songs of the remake are also fantastic. The new performance to me, like the biggest highlight of the film is Luke Evans as Gaston. I had this smile across my face the entire time. Like I wanted to marry the man by the end of the film, even though he was turned completely evil. I'm like, I'm okay with that. You can be evil at me. And I think they're just both great, delightful movies.
Josh?
I think that regardless of which version of the story you're going to tell us, I think it's still I think the message to kids is still kind of problematic. I know that's, when you're older, you kind of get it. And you realize it's not, nearly that bad, I guess, or whatever. Like, I know it's not, exact Stockholm Syndrome or whatever. But I still don't really like the general through line of the story. That being said, I liked rewatching the original film a lot more than I care to admit, given the fact that I'm supposed to be debating against it. I think it's definitely a lot of fun. It's interesting because it's one of the few from that era that I don't have fond memories of watching as a kid. Unlike something like The Lion King, which I watched all the time as a kid. And so I wanted to go into Beauty and the Beast the remake, really enjoying it. But when it was over, I just didn't really care. I was bored for the first 90 minutes or so. I just kind of wanted it to be over at a certain point. I was just kind of waiting for it to wrap up. And I just think that it's a movie that I didn't really have to see. I don't feel like I've gained anything by seeing it. I feel like I've gained something by rewatching the original, but nothing from the remake. So, I don't know. I wasn't crazy about it.
Awesome. So, real quickly, like we did last week, a quick number out of 10.
9.
Maybe like a 5 or a 6.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all for listening. This has been our discussion on the Beauty and the Beast. If you'd like to see more, or if you want to give us any ideas of what we should be talking about next, how about hit us up at facebook.com/ of Mice and Max. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about next.